Okay, Paul. So I noticed that these look way, way less stable than they did the other day, which made me wonder whether part of the issue is how you're warming up. So I asked you about warm up jumps, and you're like, what are warm up jumps? And a warm up jump is just the numbers that you take preceding your overhead squat. Now, I, or whatever exercise you're going to do for the day. Now, I don't know hopefully you're already doing this, but just in case, I'm assuming you know how to do this and you don't. Um, if you're doing 52 kilo overhead squats for your working sets, then you're obviously not going to do 52 kilos for your first set. So for a warm up for a set of overhead squats like this, you probably do like a general warm up first. Make sure your body's properly warm, and then you move into some specific warm up for the movement you're going to do. So for this exercise, you would start with the bar. For someone like you, I'd do 2 or 3 sets with the barbell, and then I'd probably put some fives on. I believe that'd be like a 10-pound plate each end, and I'd do that for a couple of sets. Then I'd put some tens on, which I believe a 25-pound plate. That is in pounds. So I put one of those on each end, and then you'd go to like I presume these are like 35 pounds approximately, and then you'd be able to do your working sets. To be honest, I would also take 45 kilos. So you'd do something like, so you do the bar, so 20 kilos, for like 3 sets. Do a couple of sets with some fives on there, so like just like 10-pound plates. Then I put some 25-pound plates on instead, and I would do a set with those, and then I'd go to 45 kilos. Let me check what that is. 45 kilos. So that's like 100 pounds. And then you'd probably be ready to go into your working set. Now the same thing applies, like with more technical stuff like this. Obviously, if you're only doing 30 kilos, then you just got to do extra sets with the barbell. So you do like 3 or 4 sets with the bar before you attempt any weight, and then you'll find you'll have way better results. You'll be way more consistent. While we're on this one, so the main thing here is your weight's kind of on your toe. It's difficult to see from the angle, but when you do your dip, your weight's kind of in your forefoot, and that's kind of giving you this very small hop forward. You can just about see it. So that forward shift there, and that's why you're a little bit forward in the receiving position. Hip snatch. So like snatches, of all things, you're probably going to do the most warm-up sets for. So when you're doing hip snatches, you should warm with hip snatches. But if you don't have overhead squats and snatch balances on your program before you snatch, you should always do those with the empty bar first. So you go barbell, overhead squat for a few sets, snatch balance for a few sets, and then when you hip snatch, you start with the bar, do that for 3 or 4 sets, and then maybe add on like some 5-pound plates and just do like 25 kilos for a couple of sets. And then once you've got that right and consistent, then you can put on the working weight for the day. If you do it that way, you're going to have way, way more success when you get to the lifts themselves. Now, what's going on here? The primary thing, right, is that when you load up, you're leaning forward still. And we've talked about this before, right? This is the angle of your back right now. And the angle that we want is like that, right? So your hip and your shoulder should be stacked vertically like that. When you're like loading up to jump for the hip snatch, and instead you can see your shoulders gone way forward. Okay, when you do that, that results in the bar going out and around, and then you can see like the reason that you can't squat low is because the bar's out in front. If like you, all of your weight is like here in the front part of your foot, so like your whole body should be like back here, like further back, and if you were able to shift your weight back a little bit, you'd be balanced and you'd be able to squat low. But that all comes in that initial dip, right? Here, I mean, we've definitely talked about this several times, right? You must have an upright torso when you're in this position, okay? So you just want to keep the back vertical and dip straight down. If you don't stay upright, then the bar's going to be out in front. So you want to fix that first. Once you fix that, then we can start working on the time and use of the arms. But there's an order to things, right? Snatch deadlift 72 kilos. This is pretty good. You don't want to do touch and go reps. You want to start each rep from a static position on the floor rather than sort of like bouncing the bar each time. The reason for that is when you do a single snatch off the floor, you can't bounce it. Is my lower back rounded on these? No. Lower back is very straight. Now your upper back is a little bit rounded, which isn't ideal, right? So there is a little bit of rounding here, but it's going to take you a while to develop the flexibility to have that fully extended. You're not going to hurt yourself doing that, but in the long term, you do want to have your upper back flatter. Let's see how we're progressing with the squats. It's pretty good. Like depth is a little shallow there, right? If you want to be able to snatch and clean to full depth, then you need to be back squatting and front squatting much, much lower, because right now, your hip is above your knee, right? And really where we want to be is all the way down here. So you can see there's quite a lot of difference between that and where we want to be. Now, if you do, the thing is, right, if you have certain weights programmed and the first couple of weeks you do them shallow, then when you get to that heavier week, if you then try and go deep, it's going to be really, really difficult because you haven't trained that bottom position. So the attention to detail is very, very important, particularly on things like squats. Like, as well as using this for leg strength, we're also trying to develop that bottom position squat for the snatch and clean. So if you're not putting the work in with the back squats and the front squats and getting those to be high quality, then trying to do it right whilst also snatching, it's going to be very difficult. Now, these are very nice. So generally speaking, your split jerk stuff is pretty solid. It'd be nice to keep that toe on the floor. You can sort of see it moving around a little bit. But that's pretty solid. All right. What does it say? Clean second step back. I'm not catching deep and making a contact. So we know a big reason why you're not catching deep is because you're not squatting deep. So because your back squats aren't up to standard, then you're not going to be able to be up to standard on your cleans. Now the same thing applies that we talked about in terms of warm-up jumps. If you have cleans for the day and you don't have front squats in your program first, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to front squat because you need to prepare that bottom position. If you don't do that, then you'll be really stiff in that front rack and you'll have a hard time getting to the bar. So you do front squats first, then you do cleans from the hip, and then you do cleans from the hang. This is all with the empty bar. And then you can try a clean from mid-shin, which is where it'll be from the floor. And then if you've got a 50 kilo working weight, once you've run through all of those different drills with the bar, then you're going to do a clean from, you're going to do a clean with 30 kilos, 40 kilos, 45 kilos, and then 50 kilos, all right? So nobody, no matter how proficient they are, ever goes straight to their working weight. Like typically you'd expect between sort of like 5 and 8 different warm-up sets at different weights, progressing towards your working set. Different angle here. Okay. So the main thing with this is you're kind of yanking it off the floor. When you clean off the floor, you want to start like nice and controlled, okay? See how you feel that, like how quick you go straight away? Start slow and build speed as you go. Now when you get overhead, you want to hold like the whole point of a push press is to strengthen your lockout. Is this push press or a power jerk? There's no caption, so I don't know. All right, if it's a push press, the first thing is you need to have your leg straight at the top. You can see your leg is bent there. That's the first thing. Now, the second thing is you need to hold this overhead position for a moment. There's two reasons for that. One is we're trying to strengthen your lockout. You're not going to strengthen your lockout if you don't spend any time there. You're also going to develop more overhead mobility by holding that bar overhead for a little bit longer. But two, if you're doing a maximum lift, then you need to allow the official to see that you've completed it. And if you immediately lower the bar, then the rep won't count. Now, in this case, you've also lowered the bar before you've actually strained your legs. So you're not quite finishing the full range of motion of the movement. Same video. Not sure if this is the same video or a different set of the same video. That's why it's important to caption as well. Just makes it much easier to work through. A similar thing there, very Yankee off the floor. Yeah, okay, so the same issues with that. Front squat, let's see if the depth is better on these. Generally speaking, it's a bit easier. Depth is better. It's not where it needs to be. See this gap here? There should be literally zero gap between your thigh and your calf, okay? Otherwise, that's not a deep squat. That's not a full squat. Does that make sense? This is like half a squat still. I was trying to force contact, and it just didn't work. We talked before about how contact is not the priority. Your contact will come when your positions are right. Now remember, on any kind of hang clean, you deadlift the bar first, then lower into position. Otherwise, there's a pause clean, which is a different exercise. Most of the time, when I have beginner lifters in the gym, I will not really talk to them about contact at all. I just teach them the correct positions, and then the contact just comes naturally. There's no need to force it because it's not a top priority. Okay, there are many other things that are more fundamental that you need to work on first, and when you will make good contact naturally when your positions are right. So you need to pay attention to detail, correct the errors that I'm pointing out, and then the other things that you're worrying about will come over time. But if you try and fix everything you want and you come up with extra things to work on top of what I've given you, you're just going to confuse yourself, and it'll take you a lot longer to progress. So the main thing is on your back squats and front squats, you must squat all the way down. On your hip snatches, you must dip vertical. You keep this torso angle, you bend the knees. There should be no bending over at the hip, okay? It's very, very important. Make sure you do lots of warm-up sets. If you're not doing it correctly with the empty bar, then don't add weight. Keep practicing with the bar until it's right. Split jerks look good. Press and split looks good. Snatch deadlift. It's just about developing that upper back position. When you do a push press, your legs must be straight at the top of the movement. When you do a any kind of overhead lift, push press, power jerk, you need to spend a bit of time, just a moment, like a second or so, with the bar overhead. Okay. Now, if I bring up the exercise library here, it's really, really easy to check. Push press on that day if you're not sure. You see a demonstration, right? So if you come in here and watch, you'll see that he only bends his knees one time. There's also a detailed description. It tells you not only how to do the exercise correctly, but also it tells you things like if the knees bend after the initial dip and drive, then the lift is no longer a push press but a push jerk, like I was saying to you. And there's also some information about the purpose and like how it's typically presented in programming. So that's going to give you some context, so you'll understand why you're doing the exercise if that's not immediately clear. Does that make sense? So if you read these entries thoroughly before the exercise, you'll understand not only the purpose, but also the execution. And there's little notes like this that help you to not make fundamental errors like rebending your knee. Now on the hang clean entry, so I call low hang or below the knee. So there is some variation in exercise names, but you can see here, like the hang clean, you lower the bar from the top, and it gives you all the different hang positions here. I actually, in your program, I've written low hang rather than below the knee. So if you don't see the variation here, you can just ask me. But yeah, all the information is available in like either the exercise library, or you can just ask me if you aren't sure about an exercise before you perform it. But performing the exercise correctly is very, very important, obviously, in ensuring that you get the most out of your program. Like developing good weightlifting technique is like an accumulation of lots and lots of small components, right? So if your attention to detail is poor, then you're going to have a really, really hard time, because it's all these little things that are wrong. And when you're like trying to actually do the movement, you've got all these elements, and you're not going to be able to like focus on 10 things at once. So instead, you need to make sure that you do each exercise correctly and get the benefit of this exercise. So like, for example, if you're doing a back squat, you're only squatting halfway down, then you're not developing that squat position. So then when you try and snatch or clean, you're struggling with your squat position at the same time as trying to get all the technical elements right. So one of the things about remote coaching is that I'm obviously not there in person when you're doing your lifts, which means that you need to take a bit more responsibility when it comes to holding yourself to a high movement standard. Now, I'm not saying that everything needs to be perfect. I'm just saying that like you need to do everything as well as possible and make sure you pay attention to the details. So like, don't waste your time by doing half range of motion back squats, or like if you don't spend the time warming up, say on hip snatches, and get the movement perfect with the bar, you add weight as well, it's just going to become more difficult. Hopefully that makes some sense. As always, let me know if you have any questions, and have a good week of training.